Hello everyone. I have some very sad news today about the disappearance of Audrii Cunningham. And that is that the body of 11-year-old Audrii would end up being found just hours after I posted my video covering her disappearance, which is news that none of us wanted to hear.
But at this time, I sadly announce that Audrii's body was located at the Trinity River on the U.S. Highway 59. As a result of today's developments, I will discontinue the Amber Alert for Audrii, and I want to thank DPS, Department of Public Safety, for all their help.
Divers searching in the Trinity River just along the US 59, about 10 miles from the home that Audrii lived at, ended up discovering Audrii's remains yesterday on February 20th. They actually ended up having to slow the water that was coming from the Lake Livingston Reservoir so that the water would recede, and that is how they ended up finding Audrii's body. Now, an arrest warrant that ended up coming out for the arrest of Dawn ended up detailing that when they found Audrii's body, she was actually tied to a very large rock. Documents reading, and I quote, "The rope used was consistent with rope that was observed in McDougal's vehicle on a traffic stop 2 days prior," end quote. Which is yet again another tie to Dawn being involved in this. Not that I think many of us had questions whether he was or not. Now, the information of Audrii's cause of death or everything associated with that has not been released yet. As far as I've seen, she was taken to the medical examiner, so an autopsy still has to be performed. However, her body was found in one of the areas that Dawn indicated, and it was also in the area that that backpack was found. It was also cell phone analysis, videos, and information that Dawn provided to police that led them to the area that her body was later found. The arrest warrant reads that Dawn left the home with Audrii in his 2003 Chevrolet Suburban with the intent to drop her off at the school bus stop. However, Audrii never made it to the bus stop or to school that day. It's then said that it was both video footage and cell phone data that linked Dawn to 3 locations of interest and Audrii to 2 of these locations of interest. One of these locations being where Audrii's body was then found. I also seen mentioned that Audrii was last seen at 6:45 a.m. However, I have not found who was the last person to see her besides Dawn, but that leads people then to determine that something happened to Audrii obviously after that point in time. Now, it does make me wonder if Dawn allegedly did do something to her. Obviously, we don't know the details, but if there is a possibility he was assaying her or doing something along the lines like that to her, if whatever he did to her that morning got out of hand and she ended up dying because of it, or if there's a chance that maybe she finally was going to speak up and tell someone and she voiced that to Dawn, and so he ended up killing her because he didn't want her to tell. Obviously, that's just speculation. It's just the big question of why he decided that February 15th was the day he was going to kill this little girl. What made it a different day? He lived at this home for an extended period of time. He had access to Audrii for an extended period of time. Why February 15th? Now, I've also seen people rumor that Dawn was messaging with Cassie, those messages that I talked about in the previous video, because is it possible that he had a plan that he was going to kill Cassie too, and then make it this whole conspiracy that Cassie had run off with Audrii? And then people wouldn't be looking at him. However, when Cassie ended up saying that she wanted to speak to Audrii before they met up, to actually hear the words from her mouth say that she wanted to see her mother, Dawn's plan basically failed at that point because he couldn't have her do that. Whether she was dead at that point, we don't think so, it seems like, because it seems like it was after that 6:45 a.m. Or obviously, Audrii had never said these things and Dawn was just trying to manipulate Cassie, so he couldn't actually get her on the phone to say those things. Dawn Stephen McDougal's charges have now been upgraded to capital murder. It's also apparently come out that Dawn was walking around the community knocking on doors after Audrii disappeared, asking if anyone had seen Audrii. Now, before Dawn was arrested, he was actually trying to plead his innocence online and with podcasts and stuff like that, and despite admitting that he was the last person to be with Audrii and having an extensive criminal record, he ended up telling True Crime Society, and I quote, "I was there and was questioned. I am not running or hiding. I have done everything I can to help her. I have done nothing wrong." End quote. Seems like that may not be true, Dawn. But there's also been even more drama in the mist on Facebook. Audrii's mother, Cassie Matthews, actually took to Facebook very angry about the allegations against her and why she lost Audrii to begin with, saying, and I quote, "I'd like to address all of the assumptions being passed around here recently. If you can provide me with a record that states I failed a drug test for court in the custody battle of Audrii, then and only then can you accurately state I was on drugs, chose drugs over my child, did drugs around my child, etc. Just know that that can't be done because it's nothing other than a rumor spread by the same father that put her in this situation to begin with. Now until then, you all look like nothing other than a bunch of silly people who chose to speak on a subject they are obviously uneducated in. The professionals you look to solve this case know that the facts and the reasons behind those messages I chose to post myself to be nothing more than crystal clear and honest about everything because I have nothing to hide." Which, pause that for a moment. that means that Cassie was the one, she confirmed right there, that posted those text messages with Dawn that I talked about yesterday. I was wondering who exactly posted them. I assumed it was Cassie because how else will people get access to these, right? Back to her statement, and I quote, "Just know your bullshit doesn't faze me one bit because the most important and only important thing to me is finding my daughter. I could give a fuck less about what everyone thinks. What you think of your judgment isn't giving me my daughter back. Use that energy productively to try and help instead of hurt." That's, I don't know, just an idea. Because obviously by now, if your speculation was true, I'd be sitting in the same boat as the men who has taken my baby from the family that loves her. Grow the fuck up. This is beyond childish at this point. Not everything is about slandering, bullying people you don't even know for the sake of your entertainment. End quote. She then continued in the comment section by saying, and I quote, "I'll make this clear one more time and one time only. I failed my daughter by being bullied into submission by her father and family that made me believe she was in a safe, loving, and normal home with her father. But you best believe I won't fail her again by no means. This is my daughter and I never lost any rights to her. As to her parent, I'm going to involve myself in anything I please concerning my child. I'm tired of all this bullshit. I'm tired of being silent, scared, and once again bullied into submission by people I don't fucking know." End quote. Now, obviously, these posts were made before Audrey's body was found, so you basically see in this conversation she was having with this Facebook group about finding Audrey that people were making assumptions and speculation, and that, you know, she wanted to be involved in Audrey's life once she's found. Now, honestly, I didn't include that information in my first video. I knew about all this information, all of these accusations, because honestly, we don't really know why Audrey was taken away from Cassie, and we don't have the court records. It's just basically a he said, she said mess, because I did see alleged messages from possibly the girlfriend or fiance or wife or whatever of Joshua. Again, I don't even know if those were real messages, which is why I didn't even want to talk about it, but clearly this is such a big thing that blew up that it's just kind of gotten out of hand. But obviously we don't know why. And in most custody hearings and court cases involving children, it basically is just a big he said, she said mess. And it seems like this was one of those as well. Again, we don't really know why Audrey was taken away. We don't know, but all we do know is that the home that she was placed in seemed to not be safe. Either way, Audrey was failed by so many adults. And Audrey should be the center of this, not this whole argumentative mess. Her life was allegedly taken from her by a man who she should have trusted, that her father trusted enough to have in his home around his daughter. Why he trusted this man with this man in general. Again, all of these sketchy, very bad tattoos, the rumors that he's tied to Aryan Brotherhood, his rap sheet alone is beyond me. But this seemed to be one of his really good friends if he was, you know, allowing him to live on his property and allowed access to the home that his 11-year-old daughter lived in. And on that point, a lot of people are very angry at Audrey's father, Joshua, and her grandmother, which both of these people have not spoken out as far as I've seen. They have not made any comments online. They have not done any interviews. They have not, you know, spoken on the news. They have done nothing to speak out against Audrey's murder. And a lot of people are just very angry at the situation as a whole, going as far to call the DA's office, demanding for Joshua and the grandmother to be charged with child endangerment for allowing Dawn to have access to her. This predator and this criminal that had access to this 11-year-old girl. And honestly, I don't blame people, because this should not have been a situation that happened. It really should not have. He should not have had access to an 11-year-old girl like that. Now, whether or not they could be charged with anything, I don't know. Again, I'm sure they did love Audrey to some capacity. They're probably hurting as well right now. It's not just Audrey's mother that's hurting right now. There is a big group of family that is hurting right now for her loss. But should there be more charges? I want to know what you all think, because honestly, I would like to know a lot more information on this. I want to hear the father's take on this. We haven't heard any of this information. I want to hear all of that first, but just seeing it from the outside, yeah, I do feel like there should maybe be some more charges placed here, because why did this man have access to her? Why? Another big question I have is, why did Dawn choose February 15th to do this? What happened that day that made him choose to take a different path and to then murder Audrey, allegedly? There seems to be some kind of forethought in this. Why was he messaging Cassie the night before? Why was he trying to make this plan to meet up? Again, it really does make me wonder, was he trying to possibly take her out too, to put the blame on her? I could see how that would make a lot of sense, and it could possibly take the heat off himself, especially if they're making Cassie out to be this crazy kidnapper that wanted to take her daughter away, that had this evil past. I could see how that could have worked if it had worked out that way. And obviously that didn't work. And then he was going around texting Cassie asking if she'd seen Audrey. He was going knocking on doors asking people if they'd seen Audrey. Meanwhile, Audrey was tied by a rope from his vehicle, allegedly, to a rock in a river. It's terrible and it's awful. And it's just, Obviously not the path that any of us wanted this case to take. But of course, once more information comes out, I will continue to cover this case. There are so many questions I have with this. The situation as a whole, there's just so much here that still needs to be answered. So let's have a conversation down below. I really want to know how you all feel about this and how these events have turned out, this new information. My heart goes out to Audrii's family. This is just absolutely awful. Little Audrii is never going to be able to grow up. She's never going to experience life. It's awful. And for what, right? For what? But yeah, let's keep Audrii in our hearts. And as always, I hope you all stay safe out there. Lock your windows and doors. And I think this is a good message to everyone to be careful who you allow your children around. But yeah, I hope to see you in the next video.